Hello and welcome to the brand new Startup Central. I'm Nayantara Rai in New Delhi. This is the only show of its kind dedicated to startups, technology, innovation, disruption, anything that has to do with the new economy. Folks, before we go any further, just a quick reminding alert. Keep writing into us. Our email address right on top, suc@etnow.tv. I'm also on Twitter. Tell us what you want to see on the show, what you never want to see on the show. Pitch to us. Who knows, one day maybe you'll be a part of the show. Today we have a very exciting guest lineup for you. We're going to get you a smart money investor. Here's a sneak peek.
Hi, I'm Ramesh Damani, inviting you to watch Startup Central, where I'm going to be discussing a cool new stock market app called the StockEdge.
Well, there you go, Ramesh Damani on Startup Central, who's going to be talking about his investment in StockEdge. It's a stock market data analytics app. How did he invest in it? What's his mantra for investing in startups? Has he invested in other startups? That and a lot more coming up on this special edition of Startup Central. But before we go any further, time for Startup Central Fatafat. This is a news draft for you in our signature style, Fatafat. And time now for that special interview with Ramesh Damani. Here's a case of smart money making its way to Startup Street. Why is smart money going to Startup Street? There's a special series we're launching today on Startup Central, and we're doing so with Ramesh Damani, who's of course got the Midas touch when it comes to the equity markets, incidentally making his first investment in an app that has to do with the equity markets. It's called StockEdge, stock markets, data analytics, all of that. Ramesh Damani, welcome to Startup Central. Thank you for being our first guest on this special series. I've got to ask you first up, why StockEdge? What attracted you? Are you hoping to make more money from the equity markets with this app?
Yeah, thanks, Nayantara. I think I met Vivek Bajaj in an evening at CCI when he was visiting us, and I was immediately struck by the entrepreneurial ability, the passion that he had. Even at that time, he was not talking about creating an app with 50,000 users, but taking on the established data service players in the world, and which are, as you know, Reuters and Bloomberg. And in that enthusiasm, I was very impressed that there was a kernel of integrity, that he was so honest about his approach, so dedicated his ambition, 24/7, working on the entrepreneur, living, dreaming, breathing it. So, I thought, I don't really do private equity, but I found a guy who, matched the passion and integrity, which I find are very important in running any business. And, so I told Vivek, I'd be happy to give him a small portion of the funding.
So it was passion and integrity that got Ramesh Damani to invest in Vivek Bajaj, the entrepreneur, and the app StockEdge. And, Ramesh Damani, like it or not, it's very sad, but integrity must be having a big premium today for the times that we are living in. But passion and integrity, I'm sure, are pretty much the principles you also follow on the stock markets. So what's different about investing in startups then?
Of course you do. I mean, it is of course a bit more risky, but the integrity issue is so important, especially in this day and age when there's so many scams breaking out in, say, the banking sector or, in the NBFC sector. It's very important to, trust the entrepreneur you're doing. And in private equity, there's no check that the listed market has. So it's extremely important, to not only check the integrity, but also to see the size of the opportunity. I think a lot of the digitization of the economy, as you call it, opens up huge avenues of opportunities for investors. It levels the playing field, it democratizes information, and entrepreneurs who can bring the blend of seizing the opportunity and integrity, I think will tend to do very well.
But isn't that also part of the problem, the pace of innovation and how rapid it is, and which is why companies get outdated so fast? So you could actually lose all your money as soon as a new technology comes in. And a quick word on integrity as well, because we've seen this pattern, at least on the stock markets. You have one or two bad instances, and suddenly that sector becomes a no-go for investors. So let's say there's a bad instance, it happens in fintech. It's bad times for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if one or two bad eggs, one or two bad apples can spoil the entire barrel of apples. But I think people who go into private equity go in with their eyes and ears open. They realize there's a high risk, high reward type of business. Either you can have a moonshot or you could lose your capital. We understand that. Whereas in the stock market, we look for low risk, high return investing. I think clearly you have to change your mentality in terms of private equity investing. And again, to mention the point I mentioned to you earlier, what we're looking for is abundance of passion and an abundance of integrity. And an entrepreneur wants to make it big. I think that ambition, that searing ambition to be the next generation of industrialists or to be the next great entrepreneur is there. And what I found in this promoter is an exceptional quality of dreaming big but grounded in reality. So that is a very good combination. And I've told him many times I invested in him, not necessarily in the in his company. I believed in him and I said, you do whatever decisions are important to make your company better. I don't want to be a veto on your decisions. I'm only looking at the end result, and I'm very hopeful that the StockEdge as a application will find wide use, because it is very important. Information is the new oil, and anyone who can give it in a user-friendly format will tend to do well.
Ramesh Damani, I'm sure you must have been flooded with emails, messages, calls once word got out there that Ramesh Damani is invested in an app, has invested in a startup. Are you investing in this space? How are you choosing the founders you want to bet big on?
No, actually it's, I do get the occasional, private equity investor, but I'm very disciplined about it. I prefer investing in the secondary markets because there's a sense of accountability in the secondary markets. You can always get out of a position you don't like, whereas in private equity, you're almost wedded to that investment. And given the fact that I'm an independent investor, I don't have an institution behind me, to check and do the due diligence and do the vetting process, is much easier for me to invest in the secondary market rather than in the private equity market. And the only reason, as I told you, I invested with Vivek Bajaj was because I was really impressed by the integrity and passion that he brought for this business. So as a rule, we typically look at secondary markets. And as you know, the mid-cap market in India have been under a lot of pressure over the last 6 months, 1 year. Stocks are very cheap, trading for fairly cheap valuations. So there are quite rich pickings in the secondary market. This was, to be honest, a one-off unique investment where I bet on the entrepreneur whom I found to, bring a lot of qualities that I'd like to see in a young entrepreneur.
So Ramesh Damani, we've covered passion, we've covered integrity. Now let's talk about that very famous thumb rule of yours. That 22% to 25% IRRs that you talk about so often. Are you going to follow the same principle on Startup Street?
It won't be linear. I think we try to get stocks that move up 22% a year, so they double every 3 years in time. Clearly it cannot be linear, but it will be exponential. I think if it hits a critical mass, then you could see a jump in valuation, which would be X times the valuation we invested in. And that's the hope of this. But in private equity, I think we all realize that it's a high risk, high return type of game. I mean, maybe you make 50 times your money or maybe you lose your money. That's possible. Of course, in secondary investing, as you know, Nayantara, we are very risk averse. We want low risk, high return type of investments, not high risk, high return type of investments. So I think in private equity investments, we need to be, give it a bigger latitude of rope, understand that failure is a possibility because these are entrepreneurs trying their best. But it's also fun. I enjoy it because, it's nice to nurture young talent and, see if they can build a leading company in the information age. And the kind of entrepreneurial vision I saw with Vivek and his promoters, I'm convinced that they're on their way to building something. I think they will, even if they die, they'll go down fighting. I think they're, fighters and they really want to prove their, they have the day in the sun. So I'm hopeful that the kind of information edge that StockEdge provides will be hugely beneficial to this community of investors. And as you know, Nayantara, I mean, we are so underpenetrated in terms of stock market in India. Maybe 3 in 100 people have a demat account in India. And that has to go up over a period of time. As India becomes a $5 trillion economy, as our Prime Minister suggested, the savings, if you save 20% of that, that's $1 trillion, will have to come into the stock market because clearly that is going to be the long-term best asset class that the economy provides. I think real estate, gold will be subsidiary investments. I think a lot of information will go into the stock market. And here's an app that will help you invest better. So I think he's on the right space at the right time.
If you'll permit me, I want to ask a cheeky question, Ramesh Damani, and that is, you've invested in StockEdge. Has there ever been an instance when you're going through the app, the insights, the data, the analytics, all of that, and said, wow, how did I miss that? The question basically I'm asking is, has StockEdge ever beaten Ramesh Damani?
There might be a tall order, but it does give me, a lot of screens which I can screen through and see whether I want to look at high dividend yield stocks, I want to look at high price to book. So it gives you a lot of screening ability, after which you go ahead and make that. I don't think it's got to the point of artificial intelligence saying that we recommend this stock at this point. And even if it did, I perhaps won't jump at it too easily, because at the end of the day, it's a matter of instinct that comes from a veteran in terms of buying stocks. But, maybe the next 20 years will bring that. But I think for now, we use it, more as a informational edge.
Well, there you go. No artificial intelligence, no robotic data analytics can beat Ramesh Damani over there. But coming back to StockEdge, which, I understand now has a 4.7 rating as well. It's doing very good business. What is unique about it? It's not the only stock market application. It's not the only application which is providing data analytics. So what, according to you, sets StockEdge apart?
Well, the one thing which I almost pushed him to do, because I found very useful, is there's a constant stream of insider buying and selling that is released by the stock exchange. Now it's in an accessible format in the app, so you know exactly who's buying, who's selling. A lot of the famous investors' portfolios are now captured by the app. So if you want to see what the smart money is doing, you can see this in this app. And I think increasingly with the use of what we call XRBL language, I think it will become much more easier to get all the data seamlessly, to study the data, study the trends, study the insights into these businesses. So that is what gives the StockEdge the huge insight that they have.
Now, you have invested out of passion, and because you clearly have faith in the entrepreneur, you took a good liking to him, you're convinced that this is the way to go. You understand, of course, stock markets better than anybody else. But, the entire game when we talk about startups and for investors is to spot unicorns early. There are estimates that we could have 80 unicorns over the next 5 years. You're talking about $80 billion. So when you look at that massive opportunity, what do you think of startups as an asset class?
See, I think because of digital India, because of digitization, there's a huge opportunity that levels the playing field. Increasingly, whether you look at a company like Uber or you look at a company like Airbnb, they're basically matching algorithms, very asset-light companies. So I think there is a huge opportunity as the landscape is changing. For example, recently you read that OYO has become one of the leading hotel operators or room operators in India, perhaps even in Asia. And this company didn't exist 3 years ago. So a lot of people who can take advantage of digital assets are creating enormous amount of wealth. And I think the world is increasingly moving in that direction. We're moving from a very asset-heavy model to a very asset-light model. People who need large working capital to people who just aggregate and don't need a large amount of information. So clearly there will be abundance of opportunities in that space over the next few years.
So if I could quote you, startups as an investment, high risk, high reward. Of course, you can lose all of your money as well, like you pointed out. So then one should keep it as what? A small portion of the portfolio?
I would think smaller part. I think these are good for private equity funds who understand this and do this full time. For people like me, for example, if you're passionate about pharma and you found an online pharma company that's doing well, or a yoga guy who's doing well, I think you can follow your passion, invest in that. Clearly, I've been in the market for 30 years. I have some understanding of what the market players need. So we are more inclined to invest in market analyticals, the kind of information that StockEdge provides us.
And with that, Ramesh Damani, I'm going to thank you for taking the time out and being so candid and joining us here on Startup Central. You've got instances now of smart investors making their way to Startup Street. We will be making this a regular feature, so stay tuned to Startup Central. But on the other side, you want to stay tuned, because on the other side, we're actually going to get to the entrepreneur that Ramesh Damani is betting big on. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.